We are in the last section of this chapter, Sita Pragya. So Krishna has taken Arjun all the way from giving him some concepts about the soul, that's Sankhya Yoga. Then he talks about how Arjun will attain heaven if he fights, because that's his karma. So that was karma kand. So it was according to his swadharma, being according to the varnashrama system. Then Krishna took Arjun to the next level, talked about buddhi yoga, that learn to work without desire of results. That's buddhi yoga. And last, when Krishna is talking in the last 53rd verse, Arjun, as Krishna mentions, that such a person comes to a state of samadhi. And that's where the question of Sthita Pragya comes in. And I think I've not shared the book. Just give me 1 second. So I'll share 2 things. Okay. Yes, so here's the book. Let's go to the book then. Two. 53. So in the verse number 53, Krishna uses the word samadhi. So the person is in transcendental consciousness. And from that word, Arjun picks up that word and asks Krishna, he asks him 4 questions. So, Sthita pragyasya ka bhasha, samadhi sthasya keshava, sthitadhi kim prabhasheta, kim ashita vrjeta kim. So he asks him 4 questions here. And let me take you to the slides. Give me 1 second. Yes. So Arjun is asking 4 questions. Ka bhasha. What is his language? Kim prabhasheta. How does he speak? How does he sit? How does he walk? And Krishna will subsequently answer these questions in the following verses. So this entire section from 2.54 to 2.72 is about Sthita Pragya. So the reason Arjun came up with this question, because Arjun is thinking, okay, now Krishna, you have talked about, Arjun is still thinking whether to fight or not. Okay. Earlier in the verses 37 and 38, Krishna has said, fight, Arjun. And then 39 to 53, there was no mention of fighting. Okay, Krishna just keeps talking about transcendence. Then in 49, Krishna talks about durena avaram karma. So durena avaram karma means keep away from bad karma. So Arjuna is thinking that fighting is bad karma. Okay, so for Arjuna, this is avaram karma. So now Arjuna is very confused that Krishna, what are you trying to tell me here? Okay, so should I fight or not fight? Right. So in this particular verse, these words, even though they sound simple, okay, how does a person, what is his language, how does he speak, sits, walk, but then they have much bigger meanings to them. Okay, the words are just indicative of something bigger. So bhasya is commentary, right? The word kim, Arjun is saying kim bhasha. So the word bhasha is like a commentary. Okay, so bhasha doesn't just refer to language, but also what it wants to describe, right? How we describe, right? So it's more about characteristics. Okay, so ka bhasha is characteristics, right? So then comes kim prabhasheta, that's described in verses 56 and 57. So what is that person's speech? Okay, and then comes kim asita, that how. So asita word means sit, but then the asita word means that how does a person restrain his or her senses and keeps them under control. Sitting is an activity that demonstrates control, right? When kids are very agitated, you tell them, no, you go and sit in that corner. So so asita means then how do you restrain your senses and keep them under control? So these are very metaphorical words that Arjun is using because the meaning is much bigger than them, right? And even how does he sit can also have a broader meaning to it. For example, cleanliness. So cleanliness is also an indicator, right? So how do I sit means how does the place around me look when I sit somewhere? It's a part of a discipline to live in an orderly environment. If we live in a chaotic place, it's easy to get distracted. And many of you might have noticed that when you sit down for chanting, if the places around you are it's just scattered, everything is scattered and not in its proper place, there's a very good probability that we'll get distracted. So everything in its place and a place for everything. That's what is being talked about here. So asita, how does that person sit? And then the last section is about Kim Vrajeta. So Vrajeta Kim, how does he walk? So it's not like walking on a fashion ramp. Walking means how does the person walk in this world? How does the person operate in this world? How does the person engage his or her senses in this world? Right? So that's the essence of this question. So it's not a simple question that how does he walk and how does she sit and so on and so forth. There's much deeper meanings. And Sthita Pragya is only used here and nowhere else in Bhagavad Gita. Even though words similar to Sthita Pragya have been used to define a transcendentalist, but the word Sthita Pragya itself is only used here in Bhagavad Gita. Symptoms of a self-realized person are verifiable and they're universal. Okay, so as they say, right, to understand if a person is moving ahead in his or her bhakti, there are two sure shot ways of understanding, or two sure shot signs of a person who's progressing in bhakti. One is steadiness, and the other is mukhya prasadat. So steadiness means that we do the same thing again and again, day after day, irrespective of whatever we are going through, irrespective of whether we are being whatever there's distractions in our life. That's the first aspect. Second is mukhya prasada, that whatever comes out of that person's mouth is for the benefit of others. So similarly, so these qualities are universal. So all people who are practicing bhakti and they're growing in bhakti, you can see that they have these common traits. These symptoms of self-realized persons are universal. You can see it across. Okay, and those people who are interested in spiritual life, they gravitate to an environment in which they can stay close to Krishna. They kind of create that environment around them. And that means it acts on all these four aspects. How does a person speak? What are his characteristics? How does he or she sit and then how does a person engage his or her senses? So that's kind of an indicator, and it's a sign that a person is interested in spiritual practices. So that's why Arjun is asking this question specifically, right? So now let's just look at this. So when we say Kim Vrajeta, for example, right? So Kim Vrajeta, if we take that, the person is conscious as to how to engage his or her senses. Right? Where are we going and why we are going there? This is an indicative of our consciousness. A person in Krishna consciousness will be very, very careful of where he or she is going. What is the purpose and how will it help me once I get there? Okay. Then how does that person speak? When someone is fixed in consciousness, one is careful about what he or she says. And if it is beneficial and truthful, there is a verse in the 17th chapter, verse number 25. It says, Anudvegam karam vakyam satya priyahitam chayat satya priyahitam chayat swadhyaya abhyasaneva chaiva vanmaya tapauchyate. So these are the austerities of the mind, that when a person that whatever you speak, it's truthful, it's pleasing, it's beneficial, and it's non-agitating. So so what do you speak defines what our consciousness is. So that's very important. That how does the person speak? That's why Arjun is asking that. And Krishna, he talks about in 17th chapter, he'll talk about later also. But in that order, you have to be truthful If you can be truthful, truthful is the first requirement. If you can be truthful and pleasing, very good. If you can be truthful, pleasing and beneficial, very good. If you can be truthful, pleasing, beneficial and non-agitating, that's perfection. But you don't have to be necessarily truthful. Being truthful is important. But I just wanted to give you an example that Krishna mentions this very clearly in the 17th chapter. What is the speech of such a person, right? And one rule that I have heard of, but I haven't been able to fully practice it. So that's a caveat I just want to put forth before I say it. But I've heard and I'm trying to bring into my life is that we cut down on how much we speak. One rule that I have heard from senior devotees is that not to say everything that's on one's mind. Right? You can easily cut back on 20% of things, what come to your mind and what to say. So there's a lot of things I can say, and then they get amplified, right? So we all are trying to purify our consciousness through sound vibration, anavritti shabda, as the Vedanta Sutra tells us. Anavritti shabda means that my consciousness can be purified through sound vibration. And bhakti process, the whole bhakti process that we all are in, starts with a speech. It could be either a kirtan, a japa, maybe. And so one can notice steadiness and consciousness through the sound vibration. Okay, so that's how to speak. So speaking is a very important aspect. So that's something to keep in mind. And sometimes what happens is that some bad things stick to us and we can't get them off. And sometimes they're there and we don't want to give them up. So by practicing this control of speech and using it properly for chanting and for speaking what is anudvegam karam vakyam satya prihetam chayat, so truthful, pleasing, beneficial and non-agitating, we get both, right? We can get a steadiness and a pure consciousness. We start getting this sense that I don't want this anymore, what I've been engaged in for such a long time. I'm going to get rid of it. And we get that strength, we get the wherewithal to let it go, let it float off. We don't have to keep it as a burden on ourselves. So all these practices, they begin with the control of speech. Okay. And the more we get detached from these habits and more we become self-directing in life, the more insight we get into who we actually are. And that's the whole purpose while Arjun is bringing up this concept of, kim prabhasheta, kim bhasha, kim masita, vrjeta kim. So that's the essence of it. So, okay, let me see, what's that? 254 and 250. Okay, so we are at 255. So let's move on to the next verse. Let me see if there is anything in the purport that I highlighted. No. Okay. So let's go. Yes, Mati, please.
Okay, you explained all the metaphor for speak, sit, and walk. What is exactly for language? What is his language?
Language is characteristic.
Okay.
So when we say, as I was explaining, right? So the word bhasha doesn't just refer to language, but it also what the language expresses.
Okay.
So that's the word bhasha by itself. We commonly, because I speak Hindi, is my mother tongue. So for me, bhasha means just the language, but in a deeper sense, it's a Sanskrit perspective. Bhasha means language, but also what it is conveying. And so how we describes that. So that's through the characteristics, right? Just say some people say, right, in Hindi that tumhari bhasha bahut kharab hai. So like that's a phrase somebody uses. So that doesn't mean that my language is, yes, my language is bad, but it also is giving a wrong intention. It's kind of reflecting that I have a wrong intention, or it's expressing my characteristics. I'm envious, so my language has suddenly been corrupted. So it also expresses the characteristics. That's what it means.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
You're welcome.
And one more thing, Prabhuji.
Yes.
We're talking about control of speech, right? So is it similar to prajalpa, like unnecessarily talking that we read in Nectar of Instruction, or it's like control of speech is like not a prajalpa, but holding on to what is irrelevant and talking what is relevant?
It includes prajalpa also.
Okay.
Yes. because it's when we say speech and when we say restraint of speech, one aspect I mentioned, which I am trying to bring into my life, is trying to speak less. That's one aspect of it. But then even if I'm speaking less, I'm still doing Prajalpa. It's still nonsense. I'm misusing my speech. So yes, it means both restraining it as well as whatever I'm speaking is, is beneficial to others. That's also an important part. Truthful, beneficial, and pleasing, and so on and so forth. So it should be beneficial also. I was just talking to a devotee this morning. She was telling me that how whenever she goes to the temple, there all what the people talk to her about is she being a Mataji, so Mataji's talk about what sari dresses and so on and so forth. So that just kind of dilutes the purpose of going to a temple.
Yes.
If you're going to do so, yes, Prabhashita also means not doing Prajalpa.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
So we talked about Sthita Pragya. Okay. Yes, 55. Prajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogatan atmani evatmana tushta sthita pragyas tadojite. So the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O Partha, when a man gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification, which arise from mental concoction, and when his mind, thus purified, finds satisfaction in the self alone, then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. So now this is this 25th verse. Oh, where am I? Am I here? Yes. So 25th verse is talking about the characteristics of a self-realized person. And what are we being told here in the translation Prabhupada is giving us? That he gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification, which are arising from mental concoction. Our mind 24/7 presents us with dozens of ideas. It can be related to I don't know if you all have been to a recycle place, right? Whatever we recycle, all our trash, it goes to these big facilities, and they have these huge conveyor belts on which all the recycled material is transferred. And then there are people sitting on either side. They pick out and separate the material. My mind is like that conveyor belt. So all the trash is being dished out on that conveyor belt of my mind. And I, as a living entity, because I've been so illusioned that I keep picking stuff out from it all the time. And that's what Krishna is asking me to give up. That stop sitting on that conveyor belt and picking up trash. Right? All that is mental concoction. One important aspect to understand here is that we should relate to mind as a separate living entity sitting in us. And always look at that, whatever the mind is dishing out to us, with a sense of skepticism. That should I do this? My mind is telling me. And the biggest problem that I personally face with my mind is that my mind is always very negative. It always tells me, you won't succeed here. And when I see somebody else succeeding, it brings out envy. Oh, he's just temporary. He succeeded now, but he's going to fail tomorrow, and so on and so forth. So my mind is always dishing out nonsense. So we should very consciously try to map our mind, and I'll talk a bit more about it later on. But so mapping our mind is an important aspect. That's what whole mindfulness is about. The whole corporate world is talking about mindfulness. The whole concept of mindfulness is based on the fact that don't pick up every single trash that is coming on the conveyor belt of your mind. Be very, very cautious. Only pick out what is right. So that's why Krishna is just giving us the essence right in the beginning. That don't don't take up material desires that are born out of mental concoction. And by doing that, you'll be purified, and then you'll be able to find satisfaction in self alone, right? Krishna is saying that find satisfaction in self alone. So that's the concept here, right? So two characteristics are being given. Two bhashas have been, as I was saying, give up all desire and satisfy by turning the mind inward. The important word here, which I have highlighted also in this section, was manogatan. So manogatan means of mental concoction. Mana means mental mind. Gatan means concoction. So, so whatever there are a lot of these desires that are originating in our mind. So mind is the pathway for my consciousness, right? So mind is like a reservoir for all my experiences. Okay. And soul, me as a living entity, I am the root of that consciousness. So whatever my mind sees and it picks it up, like, I pick it up. And then if I keep picking it up again and again, it becomes a routine and my mind automatically picks it up, even though I don't want it, right? If you realize that, I was saying about mind mapping, that if you realize that when I was 15, I could eat a whole pizza by myself and then again feel hungry by the evening. But if I eat even 2 slices today, I'm not hungry even till night. So, but then I still am ready to eat a whole pizza because my mind is so tuned to it. Let's see, right? Many people have the problem that when they are feeling low, they pick up ice cream or they want to eat some sweet because that has been conditioned so much in our mind. So that's what Krishna is saying. Don't give into those kind of desires. Be conscious, be mindful of those desires. Because as a materialist, I have been seeking pleasures externally, right? And Krishna is asking me to take a U-turn and become a spiritualist, seek for pleasures internally, right? And there are many, many pleasures that might seem external, but they'll take you external. Take us external into our consciousness. For example, many of us, if you play an instrument, mridanga, kartal, flute, so on and so forth, it seems like an external activity, but then they are helping you and take to that spiritual consciousness because you are connecting all that to Krishna. A mind, every day we should have a mind and hand coordination activity, which is instruments are very good for that. So just an off topic there, but yes. So, but they all help us connect internally because we see them as for Krishna's purpose, right? Materialist things can take pleasure further out and distance us further from our soul. That is why Krishna is asking us to move away from them. Don't take refuge in this mental concoction. Okay, take refuge in Krishna. In the 9th chapter, Krishna will say this: Gatir Bharta Prabhu Sakshi Nivashanam Sharanam Suhirat Prabhava Pralaya Sthanam Nidhanam Bijam Avyayam. Avyayam. He's saying, me, who am I? Gatir Bhrata. I'm your goal. I'm your sustainer. I'm your master. I'm your friend. Krishna is saying, I'm everything. Forget about everything. Think of me. Okay, don't take refuge of mental concoction. Right. And then Krishna Prabhupada is, let's go to the purport. So Prabhupada says, Bhagavatam is affirms that any person who is fully in Krishna consciousness or devotional service of the Lord has all the good qualities of the great sages, whereas the person who is not so transcendently situated has no good qualifications because he's sure to be taking refuge in his own mental concoctions. So what Prabhupada is highlighting here for us is that when we do bhakti, all the good qualities come to us automatically because we are connecting to the reservoir of all those qualities, Krishna. On the other hand, if I am just dependent on my own self, all those qualities, even though they might seem valuable, but they are on very shaky grounds because they can be taken away anytime. We are being always tormented by the 3 types of miseries, and whatever is coming to me is a part of my karma. The cycle is going, so they can be taken away from me anytime. Right. So that's why Prabhupada is highlighting this purport, this verse from Bhagavatam. It's yeah. And also he's asking us to take refuge in Krishna. This is 55, Manogatan. Important. Okay. 56, Dukheshu anudvignamana sukheshu vigata spraha vitrag bhaya krodha sthita dhir muni ruchyate. Now here Krishna is using the word sthita dhir. Okay. It means something similar to Sthita Pragya. So the word is different, but it's something similar. So Krishna will use this word again, phrases similar to Sthita Pragya again. One who is not disturbed in the mind even amidst the threefold miseries, or elated when there is happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is called a sage of steady mind. Now this really sounds very perplexing, that it always to me, that how can you be not happy when there is something good happens to you, and and how can you not feel sad when something wrong is happening to me? There was a story that I heard, and how that there was once a king. He wanted to test his ministers, and he called his chief minister, the main head minister, and he asked him that, uh, can you get me a ring which can make a happy person sad and a sad person happy? He wanted to test he wanted to just humble his minister, because he knew that he'll not be able, the minister won't be able to fight any such thing. And he says, you have 6 months, and we're going to have some annual festival at 6 months, and I'll ask you, and you have to come by then. And so the minister goes out for 6 months. He keeps roaming here and there, doesn't find anything, obviously. Then on the end of the last day, he was just passing through this old ragged shop, and there was this old man sitting on a very old worn out carpet. And so the minister thought, let me just give it a try. He goes, he asks him, do you have such a ring by which a happy man could become sad and a sad man could become happy? And the old man said, oh yes, I have it. So he goes in, brings out a very old scratchy ring, and he makes an inscription on it, and he gives it to the minister. So the minister goes to the king. And the king, thinking that, oh, my minister must have not found anything, and now I'm going to chastise him and humble him for his arrogance, and so on and so forth. The king asks, did you find something? And the man says, yes, I found something. I found that ring. And he gives it to the king. And when the king takes it and he reads, the inscription was saying, thou shall, no, so what's that? This also shall pass. This also shall pass. So whatever you're going through right now will pass. So if you're happy, you're very happy, that's also going to pass. You're going to be sad. If you're sad today, that's also going to pass, and you're going to be happy. So that when we come to a point of realizing that fact, that whatever is happening is very, very temporary, and it's going to change, because change is the only constant in this material world. So if that's going to happen, then I shouldn't elate very much when that happiness has come to me. Similarly, if I'm sad, that's also going to go away tomorrow, right? So then I should not be very much worried about that either, right? So in Prabhupada, he uses he explains this phrase, Sukheshu Vigataspara. Sukheshu is in happiness, Vigataspara, without being interested. And Prabhupada explains the meaning of the word Muni here. So Muni, the word Muni means one who can agitate his mind in various ways for mental speculation without coming to a factual conclusion. We have discussed this in the past, that the problem with the entire world in the so-called gurus and motivational teachers is that they all just leave you high and dry. They will tell you all these fancy, flowery words. They'll use flowery languages, but then they never give you a conclusion. And that is why they are Muni. They can talk all around, they can beat around the bush, because they don't want to refer to Bhagavad Gita, because practically every single self-help book you might read, you can easily connect it to Bhagavad Gita. I assure you that. When you connect it, those people don't want to give the honor to Bhagavad Gita, that I have picked it up from Bhagavad Gita, because they feel that if I give the credit to somebody else, what about me? What happens to my glory? And that's what there were those three aspects, right? I mentioned to you the three ways by which we can measure our growth, right? So one was body versus spirit. Second was, the first was flesh versus spirit. Second was, what was that? Bodily pleasures versus spiritual pleasures. And third was my glory versus Krishna's glory. So that's one of the challenges so that's why Prabhupada is calling them Muni. And then what he says is the Sthita Dhir Muni is always in Krishna consciousness, for he has exhausted all his business of creative speculation. So he's called Prashanta Nishesha Mano Rathantara. Mano Rathantara. So Mana means mind, Ratha is a chariot. somebody who has gotten off the chariot of mind. That's what it means, right? It's a very philosophical and a poetic way of presenting it, that I'm driving on my chariot of my mind 24/7. And Prabhupada is telling us, Krishna is telling us, get off that chariot. Or as we discussed, don't pick up from the conveyor belt that which is bringing trash. Don't pick up everything that's coming on it. So that's what is difference between Sthitadhir, the Munir and a Sthitadhir Muni that Prabhupada is explaining to us. So, when somebody can say, like for example, this, somebody can ask you this question. It says here, free from attachment, fear, and anger. Prabhupada used to get angry. Somebody can come and say that to you. That means he was not a Sthitadhir Muni. He was not Sthita Pragya. Somebody can challenge you that. So, anger, everything can be used for Krishna's service. Anger, fear, attachment, everything can be used for Krishna's service. Right? A pure devotee can use anger, but the pure devotee is never used by anger, if you understand that analogy. So pure devotees can get angry. Okay, Prabhupada would get very angry on devotees. There was once what happened one morning after the Mangalarti, Prabhupada drank Charnamrit, and somebody had accidentally put salt in the Charnamrit. And Prabhupada became very angry. And Prabhupada said, who did that? So the devotee who did that, the devotee said, Prabhupada, it's Krishna's mercy. Whatever he wants happens. And Prabhupada got extremely angry. He says, no, it's not Krishna's mercy. You are a fool. So Prabhupada would get angry, but he had a purpose behind it. He wanted to teach his children. And he was a very, very protective father. He was a very protective father. Just to give you an example of how protective and what Prabhupada was, once what happened that one of Prabhupada's godbrother was sitting with Prabhupada, and one of the Prabhupada's disciples, Mataji, bought prasadam, like lunch prasadam was served. That godbrother of Prabhupada didn't eat. He said, oh, I will not eat. This food has been cooked by Malechas, okay, low-class people. And it hurt Prabhupada very much. But Prabhupada, he was a Sthitadhir. He didn't say anything. Many years later down the road, the same man, same godbrother, was in need of some money. And Prabhupada, he wrote to Prabhupada. He knew ISKCON had money. So he wrote to Prabhupada, I need much money, I want to renovate my matha and so on and so forth. Prabhupada said, I can, no problem. I can give you money. There's only one problem in here, that this money has been collected by the Malechas. And, so Prabhupada was very protective for his children. And he knew when his child needed his care and when they needed correction. So he knew how to use his anger. I just wanted to highlight that. Similarly, fear can also be used in bhakti. Having a healthy fear of Maya is very, very important for devotees to progress in bhakti. Because fear of Maya is very much like the rail guards, right? If you all have gone bowling, for children, you put rail guards so that the ball doesn't just go out and go back. Similarly, when we have that healthy fear of Maya, we are putting a rail guard in our life so that we just suddenly don't fall off track, thinking that, oh, I don't have anything to fear. Right? Many years ago, something I read in the news many years ago, there was this circus in New York, and there were these two people who had trained two lions. And they had trained those two lions for over a decade, I think more than a decade, couple of decades probably. After a couple of decades, they thought, oh yeah, now these animals are my slaves. Then whatever I say, they understand clearly. One evening, they became casual. They left one of the lions free. And the lion attacked one of their master trainers. And the trainer was paralyzed for a very long time. I think he just kind of was paralyzed till he died. So similarly, even if for a minute we leave our mind free, then it will attack us. So never ever will it happen that your mind will be fully controlled and you can just say, oh, now I don't have to worry about this Maya. Pure devotees don't do that. Prabhupada would stand in front of the altar and he would cry and say, Krishna, never let me fall down. And that's where he got his strength from. So fear can also be used in Maya. Attachment, we all know, attaching to Krishna, Krishna's devotees, Krishna's words. So if somebody says this to you that, oh, Sthitadhir, these are the qualities of Sthitadhir Muni, and Prabhupada didn't have them, you should have a counter argument to prove them that no, Prabhupada was a Sthitadhir Muni. Anger was being used for training somebody else. Okay. Okay, so that was 56. Okay. Coming to 57. In the material world, one who is unaffected by whatever good or evil he may obtain, neither praising it nor despising it, is firmly fixed in perfect knowledge. So 56 and 7. Okay. So 56 and 7 now is answering the second question. How does he speak? Which implies, as I was saying, how does he utilize his senses to, to those external things that come and hit us? And so let's see what the purport says. Okay. Prabhupada is saying, as long as one is in the material world, there is always the possibility of good and evil because this world is full of duality. And this is a very important concept to keep in our minds. As a materially afflicted person, what I think is that I can control this world. I can fix things. But that's just a myth. I cannot fix anything. The day I realized that, as Rumi, the famous Sufi poet, said that when I was intelligent, I was trying to change the world. Now I'm wise, so I'm trying to change myself. So a person who has come to this position of where he has fully understood that good and evil will always exist in this world, I have an option to pull myself away from it. Even when and I have quoted this verse often in this discussion here, is 10:14:8. Lord Brahma, Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 14th chapter, verse number 8. Lord Brahma says, Tatte anukampam susamikṣamano bhunjani vatra kritam vipakam vidvag vapurmir vidadhan namaste jivetayo mukti pade sadaya bhak. Is what Brahma is saying. Whoever is just able to tolerate the dualities of this world and just keeps his bhakti steady, that person is eligible to the kingdom of Godhead. He or she is eligible to go back home, back to Godhead. Having the quality of water is very important. Water is never obstructed by anything in this entire creation. It's the strongest element practically. You create a wall in front, you'll find a small crack and just pass through it. All our windows are closed. If it gets humid outside, your entire house gets humid. So being like a water, understanding that I cannot fix these dualities. Till the point I keep thinking that I can fix it and I'll keep on trying it, it will be a source of agitation for me. But when I understand that these things will keep happening, I cannot fix them. All I can do is I can fix myself. I can control myself. Then it becomes a position where, what is that phrase Krishna is using? Sarvatra anabhishnehas. Sarvatra anabhishnehas. Without affection. So without having any affection to what's happening around me, then I can become fixed in bhakti. That's a very important aspect that we have to understand from this. This is verse 57. Yeah. So devotees, as practicing devotees, we don't desensitize ourselves to the outer world. So Prabhupada gives the example that if you have a cup that has an sorry, I don't think Prabhupada gives it an example. I've heard it somewhere else. If you have a cup that is filled with mud, let's say, it's not filled, it has some mud at the bottom. You can try to scrape out the mud as much as you can, but you'll not be able to completely remove it. But if you open the tap, put it under the tap, open the tap, the water will just overflow and it'll remove every single piece of dirt from it. So we are not desensitizing ourselves to the outer world. I'm not saying that, oh, I'm going to shun this Maya, I'm going to stay away from it. That's not the way. We sensitize to Krishna. Don't try to fix your problems. Try to connect to Krishna, and then those problems will automatically go away, because Krishna is the higher connection. Right? Prabhupada was always preaching irrespective of the place, because he was always thinking that how can I promote Krishna consciousness all over the world, right? And Prabhupada is saying in the purport here that upheavals can be good, right? Failure are not always the source of dissatisfaction. They can serve as pillars of success also. Okay, so I'm just trying to look. So one who is not agitated by such is to be understood and fixed. Yeah. There is always some upheaval in the material world which may be good. So Prabhupada is saying that the upheavals can also be good in this life, in this world, right? So let me see. I'm just trying to grasp my thought here. So upheavals can be good, yes. So sometimes when we are hit with miseries, there is a silver lining and there is something for us to learn from it. There's always something for us to learn from it and not get too distracted by the pleasures that are coming in our life. There is a story of Jayadratha. Yes, Jayadratha. Arjun, after his son Abhimanyu was killed, and he knew that how Jayadratha had blocked all the Pandavas from going and helping Abhimanyu. So Arjun vowed that in tomorrow's war day, I'm going to kill Jayadratha, and if I'm not able to kill him by sunset, I will leave this war. I'll not fight anymore. So what happens? Krishna, because Krishna being a Bhakt Vatsala, being subservient to his pure devotees, being very a suhirdam, a pure friend, he set the sun for a few minutes. He kind of covered the sun. And Jayadratha thought, and all the Kauravas thought that sun has set, and now Arjun cannot do, and they all started enjoying. They put their guard down. And then that's when Arjun killed Jayadratha, because immediately Krishna removed that cloud from the sun came back, and Jayadratha was killed. So we never put our guard down, but we also understand that whatever is coming to me is Krishna's benevolent plan to purify me, to bring me closer to his lotus feet. That whatever is coming is for my good. So that's something. That is why Prabhupada is saying upheavals can be good as well as bad. Okay, I'll take a pause here if anybody has any thoughts, questions, comments.
Prabhuji, so how do we remember this verse when we encounter difficulties? It's such a nice verse to remember,
Mataji, Prabhupada has said it on, at least I have read it on one occasion, that repetition is the mother of realization. No, sorry. Repetition is the mother of learning, and repetition leads you to realization. When you keep, because right now what we are doing, we are outcome of what we have repeatedly told ourselves. I was listening to a podcast a few days ago, and the person was saying that, actually it was Jay Shetty, I was listening to him, and he was saying that Napoleon Hill says that you become whatever you think about. So if I am constantly, if you have a set of affirmations, paste them on your refrigerator. If, let's, for example, you want to memorize this verse, just paste it on the refrigerator. And slowly and steadily, what will happen is that for the first, let's say, a few months, you'll just be reading it. But then your mind will start thinking, why am I reading it every day? How does this apply in my life? So all starts beginning from observation. Observation leads to introspection. Introspection will lead to your imbibing that thought, and then eventually realization. That's one thought, Madhi. I'm sure there are other ways of doing it, but that's one thing that has helped me in the past. Keeping something right in front of my eyes so much that it becomes a part of me. It filters down into my subconsciousness, and I start practicing it. Was that helpful, Madhi?
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
And I recommend this to everybody. I do it. Whatever, if you have a prayer on your mind, if you have it from some other Vaishnava, you have a prayer, write it down on a piece of paper and repeat it every day, and as many times as you can. Write down your goals. The moment you write a goal, your mind becomes active, because now there is something to aspire for. Similarly, if you have a concept, if you have a thought, if you have a realization, write it and let your mind imbibe it and let it come down to your consciousness. It's a very good practice. It helps me, at least. I'm not saying that it's a foolproof practice, might not work for some, but for me it surely works. Okay, so any more thoughts, anyone?
So we just read, right, I think so. I don't remember the verse. I thought it was 56 or something. That you should keep your mind steady, right? And you should not be affected by the threefold miseries, or when you get a lot of happiness, you should not be getting elevated, elated,
Yeah.
and you should be free from anger and attachment and all. So it's like a very heavy goal to target to Prabhuji, because our mind is so flickering, right? Even when we are doing 16, 18, 20, 25 rounds of japa, we cannot even focus one beat of japa. And now we are saying when you get all these threefold miseries and you should be stable and mind does not flicker. Prabhuji is like asking for sky. means,
Yes,
means
it
I'm
is.
too small even to think. I'm a negative, I would say, even to think to that level.
Yeah, but if it's a 10, let's say on a scale of 10, this is 10, this is your ultimate goal. Even if you feel this goal is big, but there is nobody stopping you from going wherever you are. Let's say you are on 3, I'm on 1, let's say. Nobody's stopping you from going to 5, 6, 7. Yes, keep a big goal in mind, but that doesn't mean that if you don't achieve that goal, everything goes down the drain. No, that doesn't happen. Whatever you read that, right? Whatever you achieve in this life will continue in your next life. So you're on a multi-life journey. Don't just think that, oh, this is the only life I have, and then if I don't go back home, I'll have to start from a scratch. No, don't think that. Whatever little you do, it goes into your spiritual bank account, and next life you start from there. And even though it sounds big, there are people who have attained it, and that's why we need people to, right? Somebody can say, Prabhupada says that chanting alone can take you back home, back to Godhead. Prabhupada says, Mahaprabhu says in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Somebody can come say, oh, I don't need association, I don't need initiation, I don't need guru. I'll chant and I'll go back home, back to Godhead. That doesn't happen. You need people who have walked the path to show you the path. Similarly, this is a big goal, but when you see there are people who have actually achieved it and you associate with those people, then the goal becomes easier. It becomes something that you can realize, you can wrap your mind around. And I'm not saying it's easy, but if you are in association with people who have done it before, it can be done.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
But yes, I agree with you. It's not an easy goal. It's a big goal. And eventually, the end goal is, putting your mind on Krishna. As I said to you, we are not here to minimize our miseries. That's not the goal here. Bhakti is not about minimizing our miseries. The bhakti is about connecting to Krishna. It's not disconnection with Maya, it's connection with Krishna. When we connect with Krishna, the disconnection with Maya automatically happens. I don't have to put an effort for that, right? So just like there's an example in Bhagavatam that when I decorate myself, let's say I'm putting some makeup on, my reflection automatically gets that it becomes the same. Similarly, when I'm connecting with Krishna, I also become, I get those qualities of Krishna. Then all these things don't matter to me. So our goal is not to worry about minimizing the negatives. Our goal is to bring the positive in our life. You don't build big buildings on a ground where there are holes or the ground is uneven. You make a building where the ground is even and steady. Don't worry about the land with uneven and holes there. Okay, so we are at, what did we do? 757. Yes, we did 50. Yes, 57. Okay, so we did 56 and 57. Okay, so coming to 58. So now 58 to 63, it answers the third question. How does that person sit? So how does that person control his or her senses? And Krishna uses the analogy of a tortoise. So this is the 58th verse. Yeah. One who is able to withdraw his senses from sense objects. As the tortoise draws its limbs within the shell, it is firmly fixed in perfect consciousness. So Krishna is saying, you become like a tortoise. That's what Krishna is saying, right? You become like a tortoise. And what's the word for tortoise? I'm trying to look at this. Kurma. Okay. It's kurma, right? So kurma, become like a kurma, right? senses should be our servant, not the other way around. And as I was saying, we should never let our senses loose. We should always guard them, right? When we have some weakness, we are more observant and more cautious of it. Okay? So the analogy of a tortoise indicates that a yogi can engage the senses according to his or her plan. Right? You don't whimsically expose your senses. I'm a strong bhakta now. I will go and expose myself to this material world and nothing is going to happen to me. No. Even if nothing happens, something surely happens. Something leaves an impression. Right? We should surely check our dedication in Krishna's service, but not whimsically. We should do it the way we have been told by our seniors, by Prabhupada. Right? If I feel that, oh, now I have controlled my senses, and I think that, but I'm living in that, just like the story of the frog in the well, right? The frog is living in his own well, and somebody comes and tells him that there is a bigger there's an ocean, and he doesn't believe it. So he thinks that that's only it. So similarly, a person, if he's living within his tiny enclosure and he or she starts thinking that, okay, I have controlled myself, and when I go out and suddenly I'm bombarded and I fail, I lose. So we don't want to do that. So withdraw from external sense objects like a tortoise. When in danger, pull back like a tortoise. When opportunity comes for elevation, you come out and use your senses properly. That's the purpose of this analogy that Krishna is giving here of a kurma. So that's 58. Yes, Prabhupada is giving this definition. Control of senses according to his plan. He never allows them to act independently. Yeah. And there are do's and don'ts. We read that in the second, third, and fourth verse of Nectar of Instruction. Atyahara prayasascha prajalponyamagra jansanga chalolyam cha sadbhir bhaktir vinishyati. 6 practices that can destroy our bhakti. Then anybody remembers what are the 6 practices that can elevate our bhakti? That's the third verse of Nectar of Instruction.
Prabhuji, I think so. It was association of devotees, serving prasadam, offering prasadam, and taking prasadam. And
that's the 4th verse. Yes,
okay.
that was dadati pratigranati guhyam akhyati prashadam. Third verse starts with, I'll give you a hint, everybody. Utsaha. It starts with utsaha.
Oh yes.
Utsaha nishya dharya, Prabhuji.
Yes, utsaha nishya dharya. Yeah. So that's where. So we have been given do's and don'ts. Don't whimsically expose yourself to this material world, thinking that, oh, I'm strong, I can figure it out. Don't do that. Right? Don't do that. Senses are like this. There's this analogy in Srimad Bhagavatam that senses are like highway robbers. In US, you don't have highway robbers. In India, you have them. You're going on a highway. Somebody will put a blockade on the road, and your car stops, and suddenly they pull you out of the car and throw you in a dark pit. That's what the senses do. They attack us when we least expect them to attack us. So that's what we have to do. So that's why we have to be like a tortoise, be fixed, very, very fixed. Okay, coming to 59. This is a very important verse. This also probably will be in the list of verses that you have to memorize for Bhakti Sastri. Vishaya vini vartante niraharasya dehina raso varjam raso apyasya param drishtva nivartate. The embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, though the taste for sense objects remains. But seizing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste, he is fixed in consciousness. So what Krishna is explaining us here, that you can restrict yourself. So here now he's taking us to the next level. Okay. So he was saying that, okay, we began with Sthita Pragya and how to become steady and so on and so forth. And earlier than that, I talked about the 2 kinds of dharma that we do. So what we're saying is we have this temporary casing that I am in, this body, and I have to work with it. Okay. and I do my varna, ashram, everything. So when I do my swadharma and nishkam dharma in a proper way, then we graduate to a stage where challenges of our life, they can season us. They become a learning for us. Okay, and then a time comes when we become sthita pragya. We don't try to run away from challenges in life, but we use them to shape our consciousness. Okay, people and all the situations that we get into, they are merely instruments, right? They're merely instruments to purify us. Right? So that's how we reach to that higher taste. When we keep on, that's how you come to the state of sthita pragya. We talked about, neither being elated when we have happiness, neither being morose. So we come when we have been passing through this dense forest of this illusion, and we are practicing our bhakti to the best of our capacity. We're not getting distracted, as I have given that analogy many times, not expecting a stormless sea, requesting Krishna for an unsinkable ship. That's what we all should aspire for. At Krishna, I know this world is meant to be full of storms. I'm not asking you to stop them for me, and I know you won't do that, because as a father, you want me to get stronger, right? So you'll give me an unsinkable ship, and then when that unsinkable ship happens, then I'm fixed in consciousness. That's the higher taste that we are talking about. So that's what is being mentioned here, that niraharasya dehina. So niraharasya dehina. This is by negative restrictions. As we are embodied, these negative restrictions don't help us a lot, but we have to follow them till we get a taste. So till we get a taste, we use our intelligence to control our senses. But once that taste comes, when the higher taste comes, then automatically that lower taste ceases. I was growing up, I had a bicycle. Many years, I used to love my bicycle, and I should take everywhere. Then I went for my bachelor's. I was in a hostel. I came back, and then I was taking up a job, and then I still had my bicycle. Then I bought a motorcycle, and then the bike was of no use to me. I didn't even look at it, even though it was a favorite of mine. So similarly, so that taste of that lower thing just dissolved the moment I had a higher taste of a motorcycle. Similarly, in material life also, when I get a taste of the spiritual life, then the taste of the material life automatically just go away. But that doesn't happen overnight. That's going to take time. Till then, we have to use our intelligence. We have to keep fighting, and might be failing also, but then we never give up. Perplexities may come and go, but we never get disappointed. We never get hopeless. That's a very important aspect. And let me see, there are four phases that we go through, okay, when we have a confrontation with desires. The first one is helpless failure. I'm just helpless. I'm just failing like anything. Those 4 regulative principles are so daunting. I don't even want to take up bhakti. Okay, that's the first phase. Whenever I start confronting these desires. Second comes struggle in failure. That now I say, okay, now I'm okay. I've become stronger. I'm going to fight, but I keep failing. So the first step is I don't even fight. Second, I fight, but I still fail. Third one is I keep fighting and I start succeeding. Okay. I make my determination strong. I take guidance, and I succeed. And the last but not the least, when I get the higher taste, it becomes an effortless success. It goes beyond my temptation. And that phase is for sure to come, because we see that there are people who have actually achieved that. Senior Prabhupada disciples, Prabhupada himself, they all are living examples for us to look up to. It's not a phantasmagoria, a word that Prabhupada uses quite often. It's not a fantasy. It's an actual truth. It can be achieved. That higher thing can be achieved. And Prabhupada here says, restrictions are there for less intelligent neophytes in the spiritual advancement of life, but such restrictions are only good until one actually has a taste for Krishna consciousness. But devotees are so humble, they don't give up the practices even when they have come to that place. In the entire Acharya lineage, you won't have even a single example where a guru has given up the practices just because he or she has reached a stage of higher taste. Nobody does that. So they continue doing it, even though they have come to a stage of pure consciousness. Okay, coming to 60. So we continue here. So 58 to 63, we are still talking about the third question. How does he sit? And then this part, the process of fall down is 61 and 62 and 63, I think. So we'll come to that as we go on. So let's just read this purport. This one. This is 60. The senses are so strong and impetuous, O Arjun, that they forcibly carry away the mind, even of a man of discrimination who is endeavoring to control them. Now, Krishna, Shalini Mataji, Krishna is saying what you were saying, that it can take away the mind. I mean, people who are actually so strong, even their intelligence can be corrupted, and I am insignificant. So what about me? What can I do? So that's I was just looking for that. Haranti was the word. Haranti. So it pushes us away off the path, as if by force. Right. So that's what it is. So we should never underestimate the power of our senses, as I was telling you. So there are people who are vipaschita. The word Krishna is using here is vipaschita. Vipaschita means, let me highlight this. Vipaschita means, what is that? Full of discriminating knowledge. There are people who are full of discriminating knowledge. They don't know the difference between matter and spirit. Right? They know that senses are going to come in contact with sense objects. Right? So even one who is relishing Krishna consciousness can still get negative thoughts. Right? But that pure devotee person who has reached that level, he or she has come to a point where they just know how to say no to them. Okay. But what changes between a new devotee and an advanced devotee is that an advanced devotee also get impure thoughts, but the response is different in comparison to a practicing neophyte like me. Right? And so there's a new devotee, impure thoughts coming in, and helpless failure or struggle in failure, the first two categories I mentioned, coming to a sadhaka bhakta, practicing bhakta, who's in struggle in failure and struggle in success, to a pure devotee who's effortless success. That's how the progression happens of all the four people. Right? For me, sometimes I say no, sometimes I say yes to the senses, and sometimes I say just wait, procrastinate, and then my intelligence grows. Eventually, it comes to a point. My intelligence knows that it has to kill an impure thought before it grows into an action. That's the way to see it. Vipaschita. So Krishna is just stressing on the fact that senses are very strong. He's kind of highlighting this basic fact. Don't unnecessarily indulge in materialistic activities because your senses are very, very strong. A person like Prabhupada, he was once, when in the beginning, he was one of his new disciples, his young disciple, said, Prabhupada, there is Swamiji. They used to call him Swamiji at that time. Swamiji, there is a farm community nearby. They have invited you to give a talk. Prabhupada goes there. He sits down, closes his eyes, sings Jai Radha Madhav. He opens his eyes and he sees everybody sitting in front of him are naked. It was a nude colony, and Prabhupada didn't budge an inch. He gave his class, walked away. But while he was walking away, he tells his disciples, this is not a place for a sannyasi to be in. So Prabhupada was not casual. He didn't throw away his senses randomly. Even though he was a pure devotee, he was at a point where he was effortless success was happening to him. So what about people like beginners like me? So we should not do that. And Prabhupada is saying that Krishna consciousness is such transcendently nice thing that automatically material enjoyment becomes distasteful. Right? It becomes distasteful. And then Prabhupada gives the example of Maharaj Ambarish. Maharaj Ambarish was a pure devotee of Krishna, and he had fasted, and then he was about to break his fast, Durvasa Muni shows up. And Ambrish Maharaj, and Durvasa Muni said, Ambrish Maharaj offers him to eat and, to place to sit. But he says, no, I'll go take my bath and then I'll come back and then I'll eat. But in the meantime, the auspicious moment to break fast after the Ekadashi that King Ambrish had observed was kind of moving out. And so he drinks water. According to Shastras, drinking water neither breaks your fast nor keeps, like it's a middle ground. But Durvasa sees this and he gets very angry. And he pulls out a hair, and from that hair comes out a demon. But before the demon could attack Maharaj Ambrish, the Sudarshan Chakra comes and kills the demon. Krishna says that my Sudarshan Chakra is always with my devotees. They can use them as they want. And then the Sudarshan Chakra turns towards Durvasa Muni, and Durvasa Muni kind of runs to the entire creation. He goes to Shiva, Brahma, everywhere. He goes to Vishnu, and Vishnu says, I can't help you. You have, offended a pure devotee. This whole story comes in the 9th canto of Bhagavatam, 3rd and 4th chapter. And there, what Vishnu says is very powerful. He says, Aham Bhakta Paradhino. And Aham Bhakta Paradhino. I am a servant to my devotees. That's what Krishna is telling. Vishnu is telling Durvasa Muni. Durvasa Muni is saying, please protect me, please protect me. Krishna and Vishnu says, Aham Bhakta Paradhino, he aswatantra iva dvija. Aswatantra. Vishnu is saying, I am aswatantra. I am not independent. So just imagine the master of the whole creation is saying, I am not independent. Who am I? I am Bhakta Paradhino. I am subservient towards pure devotee. Sadhu Bhir Grasto Hirdaya. He says, I am sitting in the heart of sadhus, my pure devotees. And not just my pure devotees, Bhaktir Bhakta Jana Priya. I sit in the hearts of my devotees' devotee also. That's what Vishnu says in the 9th canto. I think it comes in the 4th chapter, this verse. So he's saying, Aham Bhakta Paradhino, he asatantra iva dvija, sadhu bir grasto hirdayo, bhaktir bhakta jana priya. So Prabhupada is bringing this example of a pure devotee here, that how a pure devotee is never affected. So this verse is for a person who is in a mode of jnana. He's trying to just control his senses by discrimination. But for a pure devotee, this does not apply. Okay, let's come to 61. So this kind of is a culmination here of the section we have been reading, because now, as Shalini Mataji was rightly pointing out, this all seems too much for me to take up. I cannot do that. It's unbelievable. I cannot do it. So Krishna says, the first verse in Bhagavad Gita where Krishna is bringing himself in the picture, me, matpara. That's what it says, right? So he's saying, till now, what has been Krishna saying? He's been a teacher of sense control, right? So, but now he's saying that he is the object of sense control, right? That's it. So here now, if you read this, Tani Sarvani Samyamya, that keeping under control. So that's a practice to have, that we control our senses. Yukta Asita Matpara. So what is the second thing? It's about the perfection of that practice. What is the perfection? We become fix up consciousness upon Krishna. So the first is the way to practice. So what is the it's about the practice. The second line is about perfection of that practice. Okay. So there are 3 concepts here that you can see. Restraining senses. Okay. So that's as I said, that's the control, sense control part. Keeping them under full control is a concept of concentration, focus. And then what happens? It becomes steady intelligence. That's the conquest. The effortless success happens. 3 stages are being talked about. I'm telling you, control, concentration, conquest, right? But as we were discussing, if we just try to control, we are surely going to fail. If there's nothing to cling on to, if there is no Krishna in the picture, I will fail. That's what the way Krishna is explaining to us. As devotees, we have regulated lives. Yukta hara viharasya, yukta chetasya, yukta bodhasya sapnasu. Sorry, I messed up that verse there. Sorry. So Krishna says in the 6th chapter that Bhagavad Gita that we have regulated lives. We sleep regulated. We have regulated sense enjoyment. So all that is regulated. So And that helps. And then with that regulation, when we approach Krishna, then that gives us higher taste. It gives us steady intelligence. So not a verse necessarily to memorize, but to remember that this is where Krishna starts speaking, mentioning about himself as the supreme on whom our consciousness has to be fixed. Prabhupada again brings the example of King Ambrish, how he was a pure devotee. And matpara is the word that, as I was mentioning, is the word where it's being talked, Krishna is talking about himself. Okay. Okay. Let me see, just give me a second. I wanted to see something. Matpyuktasita matpara. Okay. So yes, this is what this verse is referring to. Okay. So we are at 8:13. Let me see, should I? So we have the next two verses are important. Let me see. I think we should be able to wrap those up. That'll be good. Then we will be able to wrap up this chapter in the next meeting. So now we come to the two important verses which give us the 8 stages to our fall down that has been outlined by Krishna in this verse here. Okay. And where does this all start? Where's my slides? Showing up. Okay. It starts all with the contemplation. So Krishna says, Dhyayato. Dhyayato is the word where everything begins. We contemplate. Contemplation, if you have to put another way, contemplation is basically imagination. And where does this imagination come from, you can ask? It comes from our past interactions. Okay. Because I have done something so often, that imagination, that picture is presented to me by my mind. As I said, mind is a reservoir of all what I have done. So just like a Google search, it completes your sentence based on your history. Similarly, your mind completes your thoughts, your imagination based on what you have done, your past interactions. Okay. So we don't necessarily suppress our imagination, we spiritualize it. So the first step is dhyayato, starts with dhyayato, contemplation. From contemplation comes attraction. Sangas, that's the next part of the verse. Sangas. Sangas means attachment. So attachment develops, attraction develops. So dhyayato vishayan pumsam sangas te shubjayate. Sangas sanjayate kaman. From that lust comes. Okay. And then from the lust, kama. Then from lust, if that lust is not satisfied, it makes us angry. And I'll read the second verse also along with so that we can see the flow here. Then when it makes us angry, krodha bhavati sammoham. So with that anger, I get delusion. Okay, that's the next step that happens. And from sammohat smriti vibhrama, my intelligence is distorted. Okay. And then from that, buddhi nasho happens, that my intelligence is just completely destroyed. I lose that discriminatory power. So that's the whole flow. And let me go here so that you can see the whole flow here, the slides. That's the whole flow of it, right? So by understanding how temptations attack, Krishna is outlining this as for in 262 and 63. First thing is imagination, perception. From that, so it comes contemplation. And then as we start investing our imagination in those tempting objects we perceiving, then it becomes a fascination for us, right? And then we start fantasizing. How am I going to enjoy that object? And then I become obsessed with it. And slowly and steadily, as I'm getting more and more sucked into that material desire, the more and more my intelligence is giving up. And a time comes when my imagination makes that object irresistible for me. And when my imagination, then it leads to infuriation. I become angry when I'm not able to get it, right? So whenever our imagination, if there is any obstruction to our enjoyment, we become angry. So that's what happens, that anger comes. And from there comes delusion, oblivion, and then we just fully stupefied. And we follow our sensual fantasies, right? We fill our consciousness with that fantasy, driving out anything that might deter us from indulgence. Right? All our higher values, our scriptural knowledge, all those, that indulgence takes it away. I see that every day in my life. You all must have observed it too. That's the way it happens. Right? So the fuel that propels our consciousness from perception all the way to self-destruction is imagination. That's where it all begins. So I was talking about mindfulness earlier. So just being aware of our habit patterns help us step out of them. It gives us significant results. Right? Sometimes we need a little hand holding. That's why we have devotees, seniors, right? So to begin, to rightly begin at the point of intellectual and conceptual level, that's the first step, right? Intellectually knowing how our habit forms and how we play out in the hands of Maya in this material world, we have to understand that so that we can change them. So that's the first step. I mentioned the whole cycle begins with observation. From observation comes introspection. Introspection gives you realization. That's the whole process, how it works. So becoming aware of our habit patterns gives us a way to step out of those habit patterns. And introspection is the most fulfilling, right? And so if you must have noticed that when you are introspecting, when you come to a thought, it gives you a lot of motivation that, okay, I have figured out that, okay, this is what is disturbing me, and you start working on it. It's a source of motivation for you, right? So, and so also from a spiritual perspective, the more we invest our consciousness in Krishna through both analysis and imagination, the less our sensual perceptions will be triggered and will be protected from temptation. One way that has helped me, a practical way, is keeping an inventory of whatever gives me faith. Okay. You all must have had moments where your bhakti was suddenly very pleasurable. So keep track of those moments. What was it that made your bhakti pleasurable at that time? What was it that gave you faith? Okay. So whatever your memories are, so purpose of bhakti is to make our memory our treasure, make it our treasury. All the philosophically convincing spiritual experiences that you have had should be ready as a written source, as a written resource, which you can readily access and expand upon it. Rather than focusing on my doubts, I reflect on what gives me faith. And I get doubts 24/7. But having that repository of my written resources, of things that have helped me in the past, of probably statements from other devotees whom I have recorded, and I read them again and again, that gives me faith. Right? So always in bhakti process, you will have things that give you faith and some things that challenge your faith. So be conscious of your weakness, but focus on your strength. As I was earlier saying, you should know what your weaknesses are, but don't focus on that. Focus on your strength, right? If you are a let's say cricket, right? If somebody plays cricket and if somebody's a batsman, but then if the batsman keeps thinking I can't bowl well, then that's a useless place to put your focus on, right? Meditating on your strengths always helps me. It helps me, at least. It helps me cultivate my strengths and ensure my growth, right? And that comes from introspection, understanding what helps me in my bhakti. I make a record of it, and I keep that record very accessible, and I keep expanding upon it. And use whatever resources you have. New notebooks, you have physical notebooks. I have physical notebooks. Laptops, I write down on laptops. Your phone, it has a notes. At least my Samsung phone has a note app. Make notes. These are the ways by which we can practically avoid ourselves falling trapped to this imagination, this whirlpool. And even if I fall down in it, I don't focus on my weakness. I focus on my strengths. That's what these two verses are about, right? So that's something that we have to understand. And as I was saying, mapping your mind, you should always try to map your mind and tell yourself and make a conscious account of it, that what steals away my taste in Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada gives the example of Lord Shiva and Hari Das here. Where's that? Where's that? 62. I think it was 62. Yes. So Prabhupada says Lord Shiva was in deep meditation, but when Parvati agitated him for sense pleasure, he agreed to the proposal, and as a result, Kartikeya was born. When Haridas Thakur was a young devotee of the Lord, he was similarly allured by the incarnation of Maya Devi, but Haridas easily passed the test because of his unalloyed devotion to Krishna. So here the purpose is not to be condescending towards Lord Shiva, right? Because Prabhupada himself says that Vaishnavanam Yatha Sambhu, that Lord Shiva is the best of the Vaishnava. So here the comparison is not of the people, but more of the process. Okay, what Prabhupada is highlighting here is that one is placed in bhakti, that person can resist lower attractions. Shiva is being presented as here as a yogi. Okay, just wanted to highlight that, because when you go out into the world and there are people who are countering you, countering your thoughts, your thought process, they're countering Prabhupada, they're countering the whole Krishna consciousness movement, you'll find all sorts of people out there who have got a good control over their language, but all they're doing is just fooling the whole world, and they might ask, challenge you. So we should have answers for these. Siddhanta baliye chitte na karalas, iha hoite Krishna lage sudrida manas. It makes your manas, your mind, sudrid, strong. When you deeply contemplate and understand the Shastra, why Prabhupada is saying something, what is happening here, we don't surrender our intelligence to Krishna. We surrender with intelligence to Krishna. Always keep that distinction in mind. Krishna doesn't want us to put a blindfold and just do whatever our guru or Prabhupada or temple president is telling us. We should ask the questions humbly, but always keep our intelligence intact. Okay, I'll take a pause here. I'm done for today. I'm not going to start the next verse, just the last section. Any thoughts, anything on your mind that you would want to bring up? Anything that you didn't like what I said, was contentious or didn't sit well with you?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Just wanted to add a comment. You were just mentioning about Lord Shiva. And, I was thinking of the pastime with Lord Krishna taking the Mohini avatar. And, how, such a great devotee in Lord Shiva, even he can be, illusioned. So,
yeah. That's a very good example you bring out, Prabhu. Thank you for bringing that out. Yeah, Lord Shiva. But and the good thing is, we should always see how these devotees behave, right? Somebody, I might have brought it up in this discussion also, that everybody says, why do bad things happen to good people? But what Bhagavatam teaches us is that, what do good people do when bad things happen to them? So that's a perfect example you bring out, Prabhu, that Lord Shiva, when he was, enchanted by Mohini, after that, when he realizes that here is my Lord, he starts dancing. He says, oh my God, my Lord is such a magnanimous person that he can fool me easily. So he accepts his subservient to the Lord. So yeah. So thank you for bringing that out, Prabhu. Any more thoughts, comments? Is everybody doing their 15-minute reading every day? And this is not a rhetorical question. I'm looking for answers here, please. No answers? Anybody doing reading every day? Bhagavad Gita?
Bhagavatam, actually.
Okay. That's good. Yeah, it's Kartik month. We always can add something. And in 15 minutes a day, I might have said this before, probably reiterating myself. Consistency is king. With consistency, we can take over everything. This task seems daunting. Every day, a drop of water falling on the stone kind of makes a dent in there. So 15 minutes every day, please keep reading. I don't mean to torture you. I don't mean to, disturb your life. My only purpose here is so that you can get the bang for your buck from this discussion that we do. If you read beforehand, 15 minutes, we're doing it an average 8-9 purports every time we sit down. If you just read them before, for sure you'll have a much deeper understanding when I bring it out. I'm far from perfect. I don't have any, I might miss 1,000 points every time I discuss it. But if you read it, you might come up with it, and that way we become more productive. That was my thought there. Anything else? Anybody on your mind? We have a couple of minutes. Okay. Okay, if nothing is there, thank you very much. We'll meet tomorrow. Sorry, not tomorrow. Right, tomorrow. Meet next week. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.